Welcome to the Daily Globe. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. This week, the United States Supreme Court stands at the center of a political and legal storm. Two cases, one on birthright citizenship, the other on presidential tariff powers, could reshape American society. The justices are deciding whether to hear the administration's appeal on birthright citizenship, potentially overturning a century of precedent. Meanwhile, the nation awaits a ruling on the president's sweeping global tariffs, a case that could redefine executive power over the economy. The outcomes will impact families, businesses, and the very definition of who belongs in America. President Trump's legacy and the future of American law now rest with the court. What does it mean to be a citizen? Where do presidential powers end? The answers will echo for generations. The world is watching as the Supreme Court prepares to make history. The battle over birthright citizenship is rooted in the language and intent of the 14th Amendment, a cornerstone of American constitutional law since its ratification in 1868. For generations, this amendment has guaranteed that nearly anyone born on U.S. soil is automatically recognized as a citizen, regardless of their parents' nationality or immigration status. This principle was firmly established in the landmark 1898 Supreme Court case United States v. Wong Kim Ark, which set a powerful precedent by affirming citizenship for children born in America, even if their parents were not citizens themselves. More than a century later, President Trump's executive order seeking to restrict birthright citizenship ignited a fierce, legal, and political firestorm, with critics arguing it threatened to upend a fundamental American promise. Federal courts quickly intervened, and in July 2025, the Ninth Circuit upheld a nationwide injunction, blocking the order and citing over a century of unbroken legal precedent protecting birthright citizenship. Now, the Supreme Court faces a momentous decision: whether to take up the case and potentially redefine what it means to be an American citizen, a move that could have sweeping consequences for the nation's identity and future. The administration insists that border security and the integrity of the immigration system are at stake, arguing that current policies encourage illegal immigration and abuse of the system. Opponents, including civil rights groups and legal scholars, counter that the government's legal arguments are not only flimsy but also dangerous, threatening to erode constitutional protections and destabilize millions of lives. If the Supreme Court agrees to hear the case, oral arguments could begin as early as next spring, with a potentially historic decision expected by summer, one that will be closely watched across the country and around the world. The outcome will either reaffirm a cornerstone of American law, preserving the promise of equal citizenship, or usher in a new, more restrictive era that could reshape the nation's social fabric. For millions of families across the United States, the stakes could not be higher, as the future of their children's citizenship and their place in American society hangs in the balance. President Trump's America First agenda has relied on aggressive tariffs, a signature promise that energized his base and defined his approach to global trade. From the campaign trail to the Oval Office, Trump pledged to put American workers and industries first, vowing to take bold action against what he called unfair foreign competition. Now, these tariffs have been imposed on goods from over 90 countries using the rarely invoked International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. This sweeping move has affected everything from electronics to agricultural products, reshaping the landscape of international commerce. Traditionally, IEEPA was reserved for genuine national security threats, such as terrorism or hostile foreign regimes. But under Trump, it's being used to justify broad economic measures, sparking a major legal challenge that has reached the nation's highest court. American businesses, from small manufacturers to large corporations, argue the president has overstepped his authority, bypassing Congress's constitutional power to regulate commerce and creating uncertainty for their operations. The administration, however, maintains that global trade, imbalances, and foreign economic practices pose a real threat to national security, justifying the use of emergency powers to protect American interests. These tariffs have generated an estimated $90 billion in revenue, which the White House has touted as the funding source for the promised $2,000 dividend checks to American families, a direct benefit that was a key part of Trump's campaign platform. But if the Supreme Court rules against the administration, the legal foundation for these tariffs and the much-anticipated payments could disappear overnight, leaving both the government and the public in limbo. Even Trump-appointed justices have raised tough questions about the scope of presidential power in this unprecedented case, highlighting the deep divisions and high stakes involved. A decision is expected soon, and its impact will be felt far beyond the courtroom, with profound implications for U.S. trade policy, the separation of powers, and the future of executive authority. The outcome could fundamentally reshape how America manages its economy, and determine who truly holds the power to make such consequential decisions. The stakes are not just financial, but constitutional and deeply political, setting the stage for a historic ruling that could redefine the limits of presidential authority for years to come. The government's case on birthright citizenship hinges on a controversial new reading of the 14th Amendment, a clause that has long been seen as a bedrock of American identity and legal tradition. Government lawyers now argue that children born to undocumented or temporary residents aren't truly subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, and therefore should not automatically receive citizenship at birth. Civil rights groups and legal scholars counter that this interpretation defies not only the clear text and history of the amendment, but also decades of settled law and social understanding. They warn that such a shift would create chaos and statelessness for millions, leaving countless children in legal limbo and threatening the very fabric of American society. The 1898 Supreme Court decision in Wong Kim Ark is cited as the definitive precedent, affirming birthright citizenship with only the narrowest of exceptions for diplomats and foreign armies. Meanwhile, in the high-stakes tariff case, the administration claims that the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, gives the president sweeping authority to counter global economic threats, including imposing tariffs without congressional approval. Business challengers, however, argue that only Congress has the constitutional power to impose taxes and tariffs, and that the president's actions overstep the bounds of executive authority. Critics warn that the administration is abusing emergency powers, setting a dangerous precedent that could undermine the separation of powers and threaten democratic checks and balances. During oral arguments, justices from across the ideological spectrum expressed deep skepticism about granting the president unchecked authority over tariffs, probing the limits of executive power and the risks of eroding congressional oversight. Both cases, though different in subject, test the limits of executive power and raise fundamental questions about the meaning and durability of constitutional protections in a changing America. The justices' questions reveal deep anxiety about upending long-standing legal norms and the potential consequences for the rule of law. As the court weighs these historic questions, the stakes could not be higher, for the balance of power between the branches of government and for the lives of millions of people across the nation. The outcomes could fundamentally alter the relationship between Congress, the president, and the courts, reshaping the constitutional landscape for generations to come. As the nation waits, all eyes are on the Supreme Court, where the justices now face the weighty task of deciding the future of American law and democracy. President Trump's tariffs are hitting Americans hard, costing the average household $1,200 in 2025 alone. The automotive industry faces $1.8 billion in added costs, with car prices soaring and sales dropping. The average new vehicle now costs nearly $50,000, pricing out many buyers. Analysts predict 800,000 fewer car sales and 18,000 lost manufacturing jobs next year if tariffs persist. The uncertainty over the Supreme Court's ruling only adds to economic anxiety. If the tariffs are struck down, refunding $90 billion could create chaos for businesses and the government. If upheld, higher prices may become permanent for consumers. This legal fight isn't just about constitutional theory. It's about jobs, prices, and the future of American industry. The stakes are felt in every household and factory across the country. The court's decision will shape the economic landscape for years to come. The Supreme Court's deliberations on birthright citizenship have real, human consequences. For families with U.S.-born children and undocumented parents, the threat of losing citizenship brings fear and uncertainty. An adverse ruling could create a two-tiered society, denying rights to millions born and raised in America. Immigrant communities are mobilizing, sharing stories of how birthright citizenship has enabled generations to thrive. The decision could unravel families and communities, creating a legacy of exclusion. The court's ruling will send a powerful message about America's identity and values. The future of millions of children, and the nation's social fabric, hangs in the balance. Legal and economic experts warn that the administration's use of IEEPA for broad tariffs is on shaky ground. Analysts predict the Supreme Court will likely reject this expansion of executive power, reaffirming Congress's role in economic policy. Even if tariffs are struck down, other trade barriers and economic challenges will persist. The modern economy is shaped by many forces. Tariffs, interest rates, and shifting consumer demand all play a role. On birthright citizenship, most constitutional scholars agree. The 14th Amendment's text and precedent support maintaining the current standard. Yet, the administration's push has forced a national reckoning over long-settled principles. If the court agrees to reconsider these foundations, it could trigger profound legal and social instability. The stakes are not just legal, they're about the future direction of American society. For President Trump, these Supreme Court cases are a political gamble at the heart of his America First agenda. Tariffs and birthright citizenship were signature promises to his base. A Supreme Court victory would vindicate his presidency. Defeat would be a major blow, jeopardizing both his economic and immigration strategies. The outcome could affect the 2026 midterms and the future of the Republican Party. Trump's appointed justices are under intense scrutiny, their decisions shaping perceptions of the court's impartiality. The nation is deeply polarized, with each side seeing these cases as existential battles. The Supreme Court is not just interpreting law, it's navigating a political minefield. Its rulings will deepen or bridge the divides that define America today. As the Supreme Court prepares to rule, the nation faces a defining moment. These cases force a reckoning with the meaning of citizenship and the limits of presidential power. Birthright citizenship has long been a pillar of American identity. Changing it would alter the nation's social contract. The tariff case tests whether economic power rests with Congress or the president. The court's decisions will set precedents for generations, shaping the economy, society, and the law. Every American has a stake in the outcome. The justices' choices will help write the next chapter of the American story. As the nation waits, the future hangs in the balance.